Hello and welcome to Engine Adventures. Today we've got something a little bit different for you. We're going to be doing a 9 SUV shootout. This is the full-size SUV challenge. Let's go ahead and get into it. A few caveats on this one. This is how the vehicles performed on the day that I drove them, and this was done over the course of a few years. So the conditions changed, how wet the soil is, how torn up the steep hill climb is. Oddly enough, the high-speed section remains fairly consistent. There are a couple vehicles that had to be tested elsewhere, but overall, there are going to be a lot of varying conditions, and it is my opinion on this video, so take it for what it's worth, but be sure you enjoy it.
Before we get into the action, let's take a look at the vehicle lineup. First up is the 2020 Ford Expedition Limited FX4 package, which includes the locking rear differential. Following that is the 2020 Sequoia TRD Pro, then the 2020 Toyota Land Cruiser. After that, the 2021 Cadillac Escalade Platinum. Following the Escalade is the 2021 Infiniti QX80 Premium Select. After that, another Toyota. This one is the Lexus LX600 or the Land Cruiser 300 series. After that is the 2022 Nissan Armada SL, same platform as the QX80. Then we have another GM product, the 2022 Chevy Tahoe Z71. And our final vehicle is the 2023 Toyota Sequoia TRD Pro. The shootout is going to be divided up into 3 videos, each with its own unique test, and then a summary will be included in the final video. The first test is a high-speed off-road test. This is a fairly well-maintained dirt road, but there are some sizable potholes in it. I consider 20 miles an hour to be an off-road capable vehicle going over this terrain. Like I said, it's pretty rough. It can have some pretty hard hits, but it is a good test, and I've been able to test nearly every one of these vehicles on this same course. The following one after that is the steep hill climb, and it is rutted out, so generally the vehicles are lifting 1 or 2 wheels in the air and have to transfer power to the other wheels that have traction that obviously aren't up in the air. And if they do that well, then it's going to climb the hill no problem. If they struggle to transfer power where it needs to be, then it can be quite a difficult hill. I also try to drive as slow as possible so I don't carry momentum going up this hill. And the third thing we're going to look at is underneath the vehicles. We're going to look at underbody protection, check for skid plates, and how well things are tucked up out of the way so that if you do happen to hit something, is it going to be damaging the vehicle? To start off, these are the final rankings for each of the vehicles after all 3 tests were completed. We have a 2-way tie for first place with the 200 and 300 series Toyota Land Cruisers. Of course, the 300 series is in the form of the Lexus LX600 for the US market. Coming in third place, we have the 2020 Toyota Sequoia TRD Pro, just beating out its younger, fitter brother, the 2023 Toyota Sequoia TRD Pro, which comes in at 4th place. 5th place, the Chevy Tahoe Z71. In 6th place, we have the 2020 Ford Expedition Limited with the FX4 package. The FX4 has the electronic limited slip rear differential that can electrically apply the clutches to simulate a locking rear differential. And then in 7th place, we have a 2-way tie with the Infiniti QX80 and Nissan Armada. They share the same platform, and they don't have the same numbers across the board, but they do finish in the same position. And the final vehicle is the 2021 Cadillac Escalade Platinum, coming in 9th place, but all of these vehicles were actually quite impressive off-road. The Cadillac doesn't have a low-range transfer case. The rest of the vehicles tested did. Even still, they were all able to make it up the steep hill climb, which is about 24 degrees, 48% grade more or less, and had rutted out your lifting wheels, and it's pretty intense. It's a hard test. A lot of vehicles can't do it, but all of these full-size SUVs that I tested were able to do so. Let's go ahead and get into the testing now.
For high-speed off-roading, if you're on really well-maintained, like this section right here, it's very smooth with that independent suspension. But as you get into the bigger stuff, it will find its limits pretty quickly. I mean, we're not doing too bad. This is 15 miles an hour, but it does have a limited wheel travel. But overall, I like it. I mean, 15 miles an hour through this, not bad. This is pretty rough. And it doesn't really bang and bottom out hard. It handles it fairly well. So for the Sequoia and Tundra TRD Pros, the things they do best is roads like this. The shocks on these are designed more for like a gravel, dirt road, where you can keep a little bit higher speed. This one's a little bit rougher, so you can't quite go as fast. This is more of a Raptor friendly trail, but the shocks won't fade. Driving this kind of stuff, you have plenty of travel. The TRD Pro shocks, these are Fox shocks. The fronts are like 2.5 inch. Speaking of which, I need to get a shot of those for you guys. And the rears are 2 inch, I believe, and that's on the Sequoia. The Tundra, I believe, has 2.5 front and rear, just for that extra payload capacity. But basically, these suspension setups are designed for cruising down rough dirt roads, getting to your fishing hole, your camping spot, and enjoying the outdoors. Toyotas are known for being reliable. Not that the other trucks and SUVs aren't, but it just makes them good for that kind of outdoorsman or outdoorswoman person who's going to be driving these kind of roads a lot. And it can actually save you a decent amount of time if you're not driving, you know, my old 1995 3/4 ton Ram will knock your teeth out as you're rattling down a dirt road. Whereas these things stay smooth, the shocks don't overheat, and overall they're just great vehicles for this kind of driving. So they're coilovers with those remote reservoirs, and I think there's an extra 1/2 inch of wheel travel on the Sequoia TRD Pro versus standard Sequoia. Oh, there you go, there's the TRD Pro shocks. All right, so when you're off-roading with the Land Cruiser, we already mentioned a couple of the downfalls from the outside. Those steps to get in the vehicle are pretty low. And I don't know if you just heard that, but the rear mud flaps hang down really low as well. They make noise, but nothing ever really happens. They don't get damaged. It's just a little bit annoying. So it could do a little better if you put rock rails in it, if you put mud flaps, whatever, remove those mud flaps, remove the side steps and whatever. You can make it a pretty capable off-roader. It's got a lot of power, a lot of torque. It's just a good, strong vehicle. And it rides really pretty well off-road. Trying to remember which way I'm going here. We'll get to a little bit higher speeds in just a second. It doesn't have the wheel travel of a Raptor, of course, but it's just a lot smoother and quieter than most vehicles. Nothing rattles, and that's one of the major appeals to these things. Yes, it's a lot of money. I don't know what you're maybe getting a Range Rover or it's nice having the camera there when you can't see the road. A G-Wagon's gonna cost more than this. An Infiniti QX80 is right in this range for the higher end one. You're kind of in a class of your own with the Land Cruiser. There aren't any vehicles I can think of in this class that'll be this reliable and this off-road capable while still being as smooth and quiet and composed on-road. I mean, this is nothing. Then the RAV4, I was driving this same route, and I was bottoming out the suspension, hitting the bump stops in a few spots. That hasn't happened on this at all. Well, I did bottom out the suspension in one spot here. I won't go as fast this time, but it's really got a lot more wheel travel. It's really smooth, quiet, composed. These are pretty big whoops here. And right there, I don't think it bottomed out still. It's just got pretty stiff and pretty hard bump. So overall, it's really smooth. I love it off-road. It's just composed no matter what you're doing, no matter where you are. Here we are again. This time we are in the high ride height, still on auto, still on off-road mode. And let's see what we can do here. It's so muddy today. 20 miles an hour. Honestly, it feels really similar to the regular ride height. I keep expecting there to be harsh hits, and not too bad at all. I believe on the Tahoe I tested, it had the Z71 and it had the 2 different ride height settings, so you can, or 2 additional increased height settings. So if you go to the very highest one, it was more rough. But yeah, this one, even in the higher ride height, we're running 23 miles an hour here, 24, and no problem. You can see, maybe see the heads-up display on there too, which is a nice feature. Makes it easy to keep track of some of your gauges or whatever you want while you're driving. It makes it much easier to see them without having to look down at your dash. Just saves you that fraction of a second and focus time. We are in forward drive auto and just going to do this high speed off-road. See how we do. Tried to keep it clean on the way in so I don't have a good feeling for you of how it will do. We are at 20 miles an hour. And actually a little bit lower, about 18, bottomed out the suspension on that bump. And back there, so here we are at 20. Yeah, 18 to 20 range. 20 is the goal. This one's kind of right there at the goal. I would say, I mean, it's pretty smooth. So even at 20, I'm pretty sure the wheels came off the ground there. And even at 20 miles an hour, if things bottom out, it's not the end of the world. I mean, it has a pretty good damping system for when it bottoms out. All right, we are in four-wheel drive high again, and just the normal drive mode. I have raised the suspension up one, the button's right here for it. And let's see what we can do. So that just beeped on here and said mud? Interesting. Anyway, we're almost to the spot where we can get going a little faster. Right here. So keep in mind, this is not the same as the other high-speed off-road tests that I've been doing, but this is still pretty good. We're going about 20. These bumps are pretty big, and this thing eats them up. We're down to 18 miles an hour now. It's smooth, much smoother than you would expect over this type of terrain. Just eating the bumps up. yeah, I mean, we're over 20 miles an hour. So my threshold's typically 20, and this definitely surpasses the 20 mile an hour threshold, but you can see the normal route that I test is right there, and it's blocked off. We are in four-wheel drive auto and doing the high-speed off-road. This thing has independent suspension, of course, and that means limited wheel travel, but generally a smoother ride over the smaller bumps. And even the bigger bumps, I guess, because it's not tossing you side to side as much. So we're at 20 miles an hour. That's about as fast as I want to go. Drop down a little bit there. I was worried about scraping the front end, but probably shouldn't be. Another thing that really benefits the Armada is stock 33-inch tires. So they're pretty big. I'll have to put that number up on the screen to make sure, but they're 275 60 R20s, I want to say. Anyway, pretty big tire for a stock vehicle, and pretty capable rig in general. So I do love the Armada. Not as muddy as it has been the past couple of times, but still pretty muddy, and 20 miles an hour is about right for it. So I didn't feel any hard bottoming out till right there, and it wasn't even that hard. So it did bottom out at 20 on those bumps. All right, high-speed off-road. We're in 4 high off-road mode. 18, bottomed out just a touch. And 20. This vehicle's big. And it's pretty smooth at 20 miles an hour here. I can hear those darn seats in the back. And yeah, not too bad. Oh, there's that Jeep waiting for me. And that's quite the spot, because right here's where I normally catch air. And yeah, not bad at all there. We're gonna have to go back and get that, but 20 miles an hour through this. In the off-road height suspension, it's doing pretty darn good. So we'll go back, be sure to get some outside footage of it. It's better than I expected. I did hear the suspension top out, but never bottom out. The extra height and the magnetic dampers probably make a huge difference there as far as keeping it from bottoming out. And I would say the magnetic dampers are the biggest factor, as air suspension typically, in my experience, bottoms out pretty hard. I'm in 4 high. We're in the auto mode on the multi-terrain select. It snowed over. We're gonna have to keep the speed down, especially for the corners, so we don't slide off the hill. But that's why I'm also in 4 high. I would probably run this in 2 high if it weren't covered in snow. So I can already tell, much firmer. I mean, from the on-road stuff, it's much firmer than the previous generation, but it feels just as good about not bottoming out, not topping out harshly. I think the front end was off the ground there, and yeah, I mean, it just ate it up, no problem. That's what these TRD Pros are designed for. This type of road is where this thing shines. Hit a little bump right here, and no problems at all. Love the TRD Pros for this kind of stuff. And like I said, it just eats it up. So we're 20 miles an hour to 25 through all that. I'd put the average at maybe 22. And remember, we are in the snow, so not bad at all. I'll try and turn around right here. Oh, sliding. All right.
All right, let's go ahead and score all the vehicles from highest to lowest. And in this one, low score is 5, high score is 1. You can see the Ford Expedition came in at 9th out of 9 vehicles overall, with the worst smoothness, worst topping and bottoming out. And it's not necessarily that it did bad, it's just that the other vehicles did so much better. Moving on, we have a two-way tie in 7th place with the 2021 Infiniti QX80 and the 2022 Nissan Armada. Same platform, they perform very similarly. I imagine it's the exact same suspension setup. Number 6 on the list is the 2021 Cadillac Escalade. Excellent ride, very smooth, but the dimensions of it make it hard to go fast, just too afraid of hitting something important. Coming in at number 5 is the 2022 Chevy Tahoe Z71. The elevated suspension still rode really well, and the magnetic dampers did an excellent job. Next up on the list is the 2023 Sequoia TRD Pro. Actually handled everything quite well, but it was a little stiffer than some of the competitors. The 2020 Sequoia TRD Pro beats out the 2023 just by a hair. The independent suspension produced less side-to-side kicks over the high-speed bumps, and overall just performed a little bit better. Coming in at number 2 is the 2022 Lexus LX600 F Sport. It was very composed, handled all the big bumps no problem, and overall an excellent vehicle. Coming in at number 1 is the 200 series Land Cruiser. This one was a 2020 model year, and it does have KDSS, which I think outperforms the hydraulic system for the suspension that's in the Lexus version of the Land Cruiser, and that is why the 200 series beat out the 300 series. We don't get a 300 series Land Cruiser in the US, but if we did, maybe it would outperform the 300 series Lexus version. If you want to mess around with these spreadsheets, be sure to check out the link to the Google Docs down below where you can see all of this data. Also down below are the links to each of these vehicles for the full off-road reviews. Thank you for watching part 1 in this 3-part series. Be sure to check out parts 2 and 3 as they come out. Part 2 is the steep hill climb, and part 3 will cover the underbody protection and all the angles and dimensions of the vehicles. If you liked what you saw, be sure to hit subscribe and ring the bell so you get notifications when we post new videos, and give me a thumbs up. Also, comment and let me know what you liked, what you didn't like, what you want to see in the future. I'll do my best to find the vehicles that you want to see and get videos posted of those. Thanks again. Have a wonderful day.